In today's video, we're gonna have a look at the semiconductor space. We know that 2024 has been a good year generally for this kind of companies. But we also know that over the last couple of, let's say, weeks or the last month, a lot of the companies has kind of lost their gains by quite substantial margins. You can see that, for example, ARM. I made a video about ARM a while ago in which I explained why I think the company, although it's a great company for the future, I think just the stock price momentarily was way too overpriced. So if we go at, we can see here that it peaked at 187, and essentially in around 1 month, less than a month, we've gone from 187 to 113. So it's I don't know how much in percentage that is, but close to 40%, I would guess. Not a good month for ARM. ARM is not alone, there's a lot of other companies out there, but if we focus on ARM quickly, so we can see here they have their earnings support, and they say that they issued light earnings guidance as the company stopped disclosing number of chips reported as shipped. This article was from a couple of days ago after the earnings. We can also see that ARM, the earnings per share was 30 cents, and the revenue was 939 million US dollar. But at 40 cents, that's annualized around 1.6. Let's say that they beat on Q3 and Q4, and let's take that number to 2. So if you go back here, you can see that when the stock price was at 190, and even if we account for quite a nice beat Q3 and Q4, that would give us a EPS of $2 US, and at the stock price that we had back just 1 month ago, we would have a price to earnings ratio of 90 or something. Right now it's much more reasonable at 50. Still expensive, it's not like it's cheap, but now it's at least starting to get to a place where if you potentially see a future where they can keep growing, which I think ARM should be able to do. Now it's a question, how much will they be able to grow, and how much will they be able to get that growth into earnings per share. So that's about ARM. Let's go to the other companies. We know that TSMC, I'm starting actually to get more interested in TSMC now. They have right now, the stock price is 149. You can see that they peaked as well around 190 US dollar. Yeah, 191 or thereabouts. And their earnings per share is quite interesting. So if we see here on Nasdaq, and you can see that their next year's consensus forecast is around $8 US earnings per share. Now that's, to me, 8 for a stock that is 150. That's, let's take that quick calculation exactly here. So 150 divided by 8. So that's a P/E ratio of 19 for the best semiconductor manufacturing company and packaging company. I think this is I wouldn't be too worried in investing in TSMC, other than the so-called geopolitical issues. But to be honest, you've heard about the geopolitics about Taiwan over the past 5 years, and it would be a bad choice to not buy the company on fears of geopolitics. I think maybe someday in the future that's gonna be true, but it's different. If you're purely looking at the numbers and don't look at the geopolitics, I think this is I would say that definitely TSMC is one of my picks. Actually, I think it's much more reasonable to buy the company down now than it was 1 month ago. ASML, it's an interesting one. I think the stock price was over 1,000. I think 1,100. Then it kind of dropped quite sharply after the earnings. I did a video about it a couple of weeks ago, directly after the earnings. But I think at these kind of prices, 800, maybe if it goes to, I don't know, the 750s, I think also that's gonna be interesting for me. I definitely think that ASML is something that I value. They have the essentially monopoly on their manufacturing capability for the EUV machines. The second gen EUV machines are gonna be towards 300-400 million, and a lot of both Intel, TSMC and Samsung will be in need of those machines, and in a couple of years, or 3-4 more years, they're gonna be needing like tens of those machines for each company. So we are potentially talking tens of billions of additional revenue for ASML with really high margin. So yeah, I think ASML is also much more reasonable now when the market cap is at 330. They say that the PE ratio is down to 33 now, but I think this is a company that can easily grow this PE ratio. Another issue with ASML is that 50% of their sales is from China, according to the latest earnings report. So if the American government wants to put some pressure on it, it's gonna be a potential trouble. But I think they're gonna get exemption as the rumors are right now. So let's see. But again, also ASML, much better to buy the stock now than a month ago, because a month ago everything was kind of locally at least overbought. So that was, we look at TSMC, we've looked at ASML, we looked at ARM, Nvidia, the big one, the king of the hill for the moment, and up 2,500% over the past 5 years, but over the last year 130%, despite going down from 140 or thereabouts to around 100 right now. It's a nice opportunity if you believe in the company's long term, at least for the short long term, i.e. like the closest 2 years. I think it's it's not a bad idea to look at Nvidia at these prices. Here we have a look at the yearly forecast for 2025. They're expecting at 253. Let's Nvidia has been really good at beating those expectations, so let's give them a benefit of doubt and let's go with close to $3. At $3 EPS for next year, you can buy the stock right now at 107, so that's around 33 PE ratio for the market leader. I would still say it's a bit expensive, but I think at the growth that Nvidia is right now, and looking at the channels, look at the orders that they are putting at TSMC, the rumors that 60% of TSMC's CoWoS packaging capability is allocated to Nvidia. In addition to that, TSMC keeps doubling their CoWoS packaging, or even more than so, year on year compared to last year, and most likely also 2025 compared to 2024. I think there's nice, let's say there's realistic expectations that Nvidia will beat these numbers that are listed here according to analysts. So I would say that I'm much more inclined to look at Nvidia now after this drop than I was let's say a month ago. So right now I would say TSMC is my first choice, definitely, and Nvidia and ASML, maybe ASML the second, and then Nvidia the third. But then let's look at AMD. This one is really interesting. AMD, as I said, started really strong. They went in early March they were at $227, and they started the year at I don't know, let's have a quick look at around 135.40. So that's a nice 65% in 3 months for AMD. And then it kind of after the Q1 report, market kind of understood that the sales wouldn't be in the high 8 or 9 billions for their AI segment, AI data center. But then they kind of reported for AMD that next quarter will be the all-time greatest, most likely, if they come within guidance. And I've been talking about AMD for quite a while, and I do believe that for AMD we are going to see our earnings per share around 90 cents for Q3, and over $1 most likely, maybe even 1.1, or if you stretch it, $1.2 for Q4. And I think there's a path for AMD to have a $2 earnings per share for Q4 of 2025. So let's look at the numbers here. If we quick look at AMD, the analysts expect that this year's numbers will come in at 2.6 and next year 4.3. Now, as I mentioned, I expect only Q4 next year to be close to $2 earnings per share. I do think that Q1 and Q2 will be close to, I would say at the bare minimum 0.8, maybe 0.9. So you got almost, in the first half for AMD you would have, I don't know, like $1.8 earnings per share. Q3, let's say it's $1, and then you're at 2.8, and then you add another 1.5 or 2, you would be at close to $5 earnings per share. I think I think 2025 AMD earnings will be closer to this number of 2026 than the one that's here. So I think, I will go with 5 to $5.5 earnings per share for AMD potentially. And that would, I think that makes the stock price quite interesting. So let's have a quick look here. Stock price of 132 divided, let's say 4.8, a bit conservative. 27 PE ratio. But this is for a company that is in their essentially first full year of ramping up their data center AI. And also looking at Intel, the main competitor on the x86 CPU side, Intel have, quite a big troubles. I do expect AMD to gain market share on, data center, both from, Nvidia on the GPU side, but also from Intel on the server CPU side. Additionally, I think 2025 will be a much stronger year than 2024 for the traditional server CPUs, both for Intel and AMD. So yeah, I think AMD's data center is gonna be really amazing next year, already from Q1 and Q2. I do think the client CPUs and APUs are gonna be really strong. My numbers are probably very conservative for 2025, but I think like they will average well above 2 billion per quarter on their client CPUs and APUs for laptops. Then I would say there's some recovery expected on the embedded side, and on the gaming GPU, I think they will launch their new RDNA 4 gaming GPUs, and also a PS5 Pro is rumored to be launching by sometime next year. So I think AMD is gonna actually fire on all cylinders in 2025. So right now, with the opportunity that the stock market has given us for AMD's price, I think, in my opinion, this is the best opportunity right now, as of early August of 2024. And we know that the guidance for Q3 is amazing. They guided for $6.7 billion US, and I think that's gonna surprise the market. So let's see. For the expectations, earning forecast of the quarterly earnings for September is expected is around 0.71. I think they will. I think they will beat it by quite a nice number. Yeah, I would say so. I think AMD will beat that by quite a nice number. So yeah, in my opinion, right now is on a general term much better opportunity to buy the semiconductor space. Additionally, we know that there are some rumors that Nvidia is gonna try to get some packaging capacity at Intel's factories. They are in need of more volume out there for their H100 and H200 chips, and Intel is one way to do it. TSMC is fully booked, so they need another partner. These are rumors, but let's wait and see. On the bad side for Nvidia is that some of the customers, there's been a lot of rumors beneath the waters that Nvidia is doing some foul play and forcing and threatening customers, essentially forcing them to not buy AMD and Intel chips in AI data center. And this is something that actually has been happening previously for Nvidia. So let's wait and see how this turns out. But I think in the long term, there are all more threats to Nvidia than the market understands, in my opinion. Finally, let's have a look at these kind of, there are some kind of nuggets out there about the manufacturing capability of Intel versus TSMC. Although I think that Intel will kind of close the gap a bit, I do believe that TSMC's position is not threatened at all until, at least 5 years from now. But Intel's position will be better than it's been over the past 5 years. Addition to that, when we're looking at the servers, I found a rumor. I don't know how to trust this, but the rumors are that, remember that this year Intel launched their first generation of E-core based Xenon Sierra Forest. So from this generation onwards, they have an E-core version of their servers and a P-core, so a power core, so a more, the E-core, the Crestmont one in Sierra Forest is gonna be smaller one, more power efficient, and more for cloud kind of use cases. Whereas the Granite Rapids will compete against AMD's, fully loaded Zen 5 cores. And for the follow-up to these two is gonna be for next year, called Diamond Rapids in the P core and Clearwater Forest for the E core. So you see the forest line up is essentially the E-core, and the rapids, granite and diamond rapids are the P-core. Now, some rumors are going that Intel is, finally understanding that they need to put some brain behind their AI GPU, because Intel is losing a lot of market share to AMD in the traditional data center that has kind of been their bread and butter for a long time. So they're losing that market to AMD. AMD is, firing on all cylinders in that market. So one way out is to kind of gain some market in the AI GPU, the market that, has essentially helped Nvidia to become one of the biggest companies on the planet, and most likely within a year become the undisputed biggest company on the planet. So Intel rumors are out there that they kind of forced their third gen Forest, so whatever name that would be, what XXS Forest, based on Intel 18A for the 2026 lineup. The rumors are that they forced that engineering team to work on the XE4 Falcon Shores, which will be their Gaudi 3 successor for AI GPUs. In my opinion, it's a dangerous move, because if they fail and they don't get a lot of market share on the AI GPU against Nvidia and also AMD, then they'll kind of lose also their kind of somewhat competitive successor to successor to Sierra Forest and Clearwater Forest. The reviews of Crestmont E-core on Sierra Forest Intel 3 has been really good. Not beating AMD on all workloads, but they are competitive, and in some workloads much better than AMD, and some a bit worse. And Clearwater Forest, the second gen of that is expected to be even better, and based on a much better Intel 18A node for next year. So it's a risk. If this rumor is supposed to be true, it's a risk. But I kind of believe that this rumor could possibly be true, because Intel mentioned that they're gonna cut their workforce by the bare minimum of 15%. It's going to be close to 18 to 20,000 people that's gonna leave their jobs. So they need to put their workforce behind the whatever kind of hardware they are believing the most on, and the ones with the best potential. And right now the GPU in the server side is much more lucrative deal than a CPU. But if they give up their competitive advantage, and essentially AMD gets a clear way to just get even more market share, that's why I think, like, in the end this is like AMD working in the shadows. I think most people are a bit scared of the price action for AMD. In my view, it's just 2025 looks to be one of the greatest year for AMD, most likely the best year in their history, and I think they are executing so well in every single front. Don't forget that AMD is by far the best company on the planet on the embedded FPGA. They are very competitive on the gaming GPU, especially on the console side. They are supplying PlayStation and Xbox, and they are somewhat competitive, especially in the mid-range compared to Nvidia on the gaming GPU. And the client CPUs, so your laptop CPUs and GPUs, AMD is for sure taking, they are becoming a really important players. You are seeing rumors left, right, and center about, new AMD laptops all over the place in all segments. They are like attacking Intel from every single angle. So I think, AMD is going to be a big winner there next year. And data center is going to be, they're going to take market share from Intel. They're going to take market share from Nvidia, I do believe. And they're going to have a nice fat margins. I think AMD is the best case here. But again, I've explained now, I believe in Nvidia as well. I believe in definitely, I think, TSM. TSM is a nice opportunity if you want to spread your risk. And lastly, before I leave this video, Micron. It's been a tough 1 month for Micron. They have essentially gone from highs of over 150 to now 92 in essentially a month or so. And I think that one is a bit more interesting actually. Micron's next year's expected earnings is around $8 to $9, and the high end is over 12. If these numbers are to be believed, which I do believe is possible due to the insane amount of AI demand, and Micron is making the high bandwidth memory for both AMD and as well Nvidia, and most likely also Intel, and a lot of other players. They don't obviously only do HBM, they do other kind of memory. But if these numbers, are to be expected, and I don't see any reason why not, at least let's see, even if you go with a number of $7, that still, puts the price to earnings ratio of, I don't know, like 12. So now the company is much more interesting, but Micron's business traditionally is very cyclical. So the risk there is that maybe next year is going to be good, but then maybe 2026 is not going to be great. And this is essentially what the yearly forecast says, but that's only based on one estimate, and it's still fairly bit out. It's difficult to say if the AI hype will die out before 2026. If it does, obviously Micron is not a nice place to be, because you could easily see their earnings and their income drop quite sharply the moment the AI kind of hype dies, or at least slows down a bit. So it's going to affect the memory manufacturers quite hard. So yeah, I think this week has been tough, but it gives you much better opportunity to go into the semi space again, in my opinion. So yeah, that's gonna do it. Please like the video, subscribe, add your comments. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.